I was going to say welcome everyone while I'm muted. Isn't that's the most commonly used word now, right? Is you're muted. Every single meeting has the same one. Um, so today we're talking about retaining your employees, and I think getting employees and retaining employees, especially now, is difficult. There's a lot of people have left the workforce, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons behind that. Plus, there is the retiring, aging population that there is not enough, literally the same amount of people to fill jobs. So it gets very competitive to be an employer, and um, I know, Kevin, you were saying that you had a lot of experience with employers across the country as well, and I also work with companies all over the United States and Canada, and it's the same problem everywhere, right? No one can
It,
find enough people. They can't find enough experienced people, and when they do have them, it's hard to keep the people you already got.
yeah, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, competition, pay, all that stuff. So we're going to look at a few of those and kind of talk about it. I mean, this is a big topic.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's a huge topic. Kevin, do you want to introduce our guests today? Because I think you know them better than I do.
I am the guest.
Oh, you are the guest. Wow,
I'm
that's
speaking.
funny. Uh, so
Uh,
you obviously know the guest better than I do then. Uh, but yeah, do you want to take a minute and
sure.
introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about today?
So I'm Kevin with Dale Carnegie. I've been with Dale Carnegie for about 6 years now. And I'm really, I came into Dale Carnegie through a program and I just fell in love with the concepts and some of the things that it taught me and how to control my stress that I just decided to go to work for them. And I really, I'm excited about that. I'm working and finishing my master's of education in adult learning and curriculum writing. So I have 2 classes left. I'm a master's. And we have been since 1912, of course, I wasn't alive back then. Dale Carnegie has really been focusing on employee engagement and what helps motivate and keep employees engaged, which is the topic that we're kind of going to look at is how do we keep our good people from leaving to another organization? So that's what our focus is going to be on today. We could talk about the great, retirement, the people exiting, going off to different, careers and stuff. We'd be here for 4 hours.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
try to
think
keep this limited to the time limit that we have. So
yeah, I think we need to really focus on how do we keep the people that we already have, and getting employees can be another conversation. But I also think that a real key that can help with keeping, getting employees is retaining employees, right?
yep,
A lot
yep,
of times the people who are people, that are already in your workforce, referring out to other people or reaching out to their network and saying, hey, there's this position is open, or come work with me, at our place.
yeah.
But I'll let you take it from here. And so, Kevin McWhirter,
Yeah, all
let's
right.
talk about
So let me
keeping our
share
employees.
the screen here. Woo-hoo. So keeping good employees from leaving, like you said, this is a big topic. We could go into a lot of different areas in this, but I wanted to kind of stay focused on, what can we do as, business owners, managers, keeping our team engaged and keeping them from going to the competition because none of us want to lose our best employees. So here's one of the questions that we have, and we're doing another webinar, almost 2 hour webinar on this topic next week. Do you know the real reason people are leaving? Is it burnout, money, or other? Uh, just by a show of hands, which one, do you think is, burnout? Which one thinks is money? Or throw it in the chat. Who thinks it's burnout? Raise your hand. Few
I
of it.
think I definitely think it's a combination myself.
Combination is, for money. And, people are saying, yeah, they're leaving for money. So let's take a look at this. Burnout, by the way, this is right during the COVID, has been classified as a disease by the World Health Organization. And you could look at it, they classify it as a syndrome conceptualized as a result from chronic workplace stress. So it's related to workplace stress. feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. You're overworked, you can't get things done. Increased mental distance from one's jobs because, I got to stay here, I got to wear my mask. All these are factoring in to, the workplace burnout. And so when we talk about burnout, it is, the disease, according to this article here, is saying that it is related to work. There are some other outside factors that can bring into it, but it is work related, and they're looking at this as a serious illness for companies that need to get on top of this and help their employees start to develop some skills to reduce that stress at work.
Hey,
So
Kevin, I want to just step in for 1 sec there, and I want to ask you, do you want us to have people kind of, tell you their questions as we go along, or are you going to take some breaks for questions or
I'll
questions
take a few breaks because I'm going to be asking a lot of questions during the program, and we'll be, having in here stuff. So
sounds good. So you prompt us when you want us to ask questions.
So, this is a burnout cycle, and I really, thought this was great. This is something that our learning and development and our team thought leadership team came up with, and they looked at this and they pulled from different resources. And it's the 9 steps that people go through, an employee goes through before they get burned out. And so they talk about motivational commitment, starting a new job. It's like that new car. We're so excited and we're ready to go. We want to do everything we can. And then we start to get comfortable in the routine and, what's going on at work. It's kind of like we stop washing the car. We're kind of comfortable now. Okay, it's okay if I spill something in the car. It's not that big of a deal. And then we get bored with it. It's like, it's not new anymore. It's the old routine. And so, thinking about, hey, what can I do to kind of get, motivated? And then we move into disenchanted and we're like, okay, what happened? This isn't what I thought I was getting into. And I really need to do something, but they usually don't. They just sit there and think about it. And then they moved into the disenchanted stage. It's got to get better. There's something that's going to help us get better, and we'll be motivated about it. And then perilous, is it ever going to get better? Am I gonna, is this going to go the way I want it to? And then they start resenting their coworkers. They talk to coworkers, telling them, you need better training. It's because of you I can't get my job done. And then 7, they move to blaming their employer. You don't give me the resources or training that I need. 8, they just sit there, do the bare minimum, complain and grumble behind the scenes. They're starting to look for jobs. They just get by, like I said, with the bare minimum. They're leaving, like at 4:59 instead of 5 o'clock. They aren't staying late. And then 9, they finally find that other job and they escape. So as managers and owners, which stage do we need to start to get involved in to prevent them from leaving? Throw it out. Which stage do you think?
Actually, I think it starts between 1 and 2.
1 and 2, okay.
So the very beginning.
Very beginning, okay.
I think boredom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're going to come back to
Boredom
this
is a
at the
big
end
one.
after we look at some of the things of engagement and what we're focusing in on. But I just wanted to throw this out, kind of get going. What is the burnout? What is the cause of burnout? So burnout is a lack of engagement. The person feels like they're not engaged. So when we talk about engagement, what does that mean to you? What does engagement mean?
To me, it means actively participating in conversations at a team level. It's bringing new ideas to the organization. It's actively looking for opportunities for improvements. So they're suggesting, we should do this. Let's try this. How about, why aren't we doing this? That sort of pushing the organization. It to me is engagement, where they're actively thinking about, what they can do and how they can contribute. And then, then it comes back to leadership to really manage those innovations in a way that keeps them engaged in that. And, running up against a brick wall is not going to, won't last.
there's a lot of that in there, getting them engaged, leadership being engaged. So when we talk about this, why is employee engagement so important? And then, go to the next question, who's to blame for it? And why do you think, as most power to improve, who has the most power to improve engagement and why? So let's talk about these three questions. Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think why is it important, I think, is really for the individual to take some ownership in whatever their position is and the success of the agency. Their why is just as important as the organization's why.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for the why is employee engagement important. One, for engaged employees leads to more success for the company itself, but it also gives them a sense of worth and value in the organization, like what I'm doing matters, and this is how it's contributing to the success of the organization.
So let's throw another question in here just for fun. Who remembers the last time you left a job to go to work for another company or start your own, and why you did that?
I remember why, but it was quite a while ago.
Why? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest thing was as an IT contractor, I was constantly looking for work over and over and over again. Right. So every 6 months, you got to have a new job. Gets old pretty fast. But also, you're never in charge of anything, right? You're pretty much not a part of organizations. So you don't have any real engagement. You're like, come in, do this task, get this thing completed, and then out the door to another company and a new set of people.
Yeah. And how many of our team members feel that same way in their current position? That they aren't part of the overall plan. They don't have any say in what they can do. I mean, looking at that, talking about that. So who has the most power to improve engagement?
Speaking from an employee standpoint, I absolutely think the employer and or supervisory entities have a significant, almost a leadership role in that. I mean, the previous question, I left my last position because I found that my engagement in the success of the team wasn't equaled or even met from my employer, to a point that I felt like a lost entity within the whole system. And so I left. I'm like, if my engagement isn't important enough for you to actually be engaged with me, why am I there? And so I truly believe that the employers, supervisors, managers have a much larger part in employee engagement, because they're the ones that have to reciprocate what your employee is giving you.
Yeah. And it's important, just like you said, you left because you weren't engaged and you didn't feel like they cared if you're engaged. Hey, I pay you, that's good enough. And there's a lot of that going on right now in the industry, and it's really hard. And the other factor is that, your employees out looking for a job, and they get an offer that's a little bit more than what you're making. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But then, how do you keep them from jumping, for a raise?
Well, and I think good employees get absolutely overlooked because they've been there 3, 5, 7 years, but then the new employees you've hired in the last year are making more than them because of inflation, and they're having to pay them more to come. And so you've had an employee who's engaged for 3 to 5 years that you're not actually appreciating in any way that's significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's one of the hardest topics to deal with is, I got these good employees making this much. I got to pay these a little bit more that are coming in. I can't afford to pay these more, but I'm going to lose them if I don't. And as a small business owner, we're kind of in a vicious cycle there, aren't we?
Yeah, well, and thus you can't afford not to pay them more either.
Yeah. So, Dale Carnegie
they're also
go
going to
ahead.
talk when they leave and say, I left because Joe Schmo is getting paid $3 an hour more than me, and I can get $6 an hour more over there. So yeah, you're basically crapping on your good long-term employees that have your back, and you're shooting yourself in the foot by letting them go.
And you know, sometimes it happens without us even knowing, because we're not in tune to those employees and staying focused on it. And that's part of the problem that we have, is that we do really need to be listening to all the employees. So going to this study, everybody know who Gallup is. Tower Watson and Blessing White are two big HR companies in the United States. And then MSW is another entity that does employees, you know, working employees, and also does kind of like Gallup does. And it's an organization that we hired to do this study on what levels of engagement there are in a workforce. And we have three levels that we looked at: is engaged, partially engaged, and actively disengaged. And the engaged are those people that we're just talking about. The employees have been there long term, are excited to be there. They have great ideas. They're motivated to help build the organization. They want to be part of the organization. And they're the person who walks into your office and says, "Hey, Tony, I got a great idea for something we could do online." And they're always eager to promote and come up with new ideas. Partially engaged, these are a great segment of our workforce, and especially with some of the bigger companies and even smaller companies. These are the people that come in 9 to 5, work, get the job done. If you ask them to do something extra, they will, and they're there for the paycheck. They're okay just being, hey, day to day. Now, we can't ignore them. If we ignore them, what happens is they start to become actively disengaged, and then we lose them. And we don't want to lose this segment, because this is usually the majority of our population, as far as employees go, are the partially engaged. They're there for the job, they're there for the paycheck, they're encouraged, they're motivated, but they're just not into it, creating new ideas or concepts. They just do what they need to do to get the job done. Actively disengaged, we've coined a phrase called whiny sucky babies. These are the ones that complain about everything. Anybody have an employee that they know that does that? What does that do to the rest of the employees around that person? Oh, we got to do that again. What happens?
Well, they're like a fungus.
Yeah, we start getting people disfranchised, and they don't want to be there. They don't want to be, by this person. It's creating a toxic working environment. And now I want to leave because that's all Johnny does is whine and complains about everything. And this person's not trying to sabotage your business. They're just not connected. And they're part of the warning sign that we need to do something, because they are affecting other people in the organization. How do we get them to that next level? How do we get them partially engaged and up to the engaged level? And so we're looking at those. What Dale Carnegie did that Gallup and Towers and Watson, Blessing and White didn't do is look at what drives engagement. These are the levels of engagement in here. And in our study that we did, and we're, there's a new study that's just coming out that's kind of, same concept. What drives engagement and keeps employees there is a direct satisfaction with their immediate manager. They have to have some kind of relationship with their manager, that the manager, likes them, they're talking to them, they're communicating to them. And then the other two, pride in the organization. Is it an organization I want to work for and let my friends know that I'm working for? I'm eager to, tell them about it, say, hey, come work for us. We were excited. So, and this kind of goes to our mission and vision that we create for our company. Are we talking the talk, walking the walk? Are we supporting our mission and vision? And then belief in the senior leadership. If you're the owner, do they believe that you have their best, at heart, that you care about them? Do you care about the organization and making it grow and having everybody be successful? So, and are you communicating that down through all the levels? Smaller businesses that only have 10, 15 employees, we're probably the senior leadership, the pride of the organization, and the direct manager. So all three of these are tied into one, and we need to be aware of that we have to focus on all three of these areas. Any questions on that? Just throw that out. Throw the next one here. And then the last one is us. We have to not only be these, but act them as well. And talking about that, being satisfied with our managers. If we're the owner, having that relationship with our industry and our business relationships that we, you know, have customers or our suppliers, connecting with them, making it, you know, a successful environment. Because the last thing we need is a supplier to say, hey, those guys are jerks to me all the time, so I'm going to deliver their supply last. And if I don't get it today, they get it tomorrow. Well, what does that do for our, you know, work team? Well, hey, the shipment didn't come today, so we'll probably have to catch up tomorrow. So I guess we're going to have to let everybody go home early today. How does that affect the team? You know, and that's a lot of issues that are going on right now with supply chain. Nabisco just was in the news about that they had to go and get their employees out of the parking lot to come back in and work because a bunch of shipments came in of perishable goods. And so it's a big issue. What do we do with that? So
those issues ultimately are secondary, because if you don't have engagement and any pride in anything prior to that, you're definitely going to lose people if they don't want the business success to happen. So,
absolutely.
Like at Nabisco, if they have to go pull people out of the parking lot, well, if you've already told them to go home at that point, you better have some engagement or they're going to tell you no.
Well, that's, you know, one of the things. In fact, we were talking in the policy committee. There's a legislation to have manufacturing companies give notification to their employees 2 weeks in advance of when they have to do overtime.
Right.
Good luck with that one. Any business owner in this call knows that that's impossible to do, because I mean, you don't know when you're going to have to work overtime. So
Well, there's definitely disengagement with people when they are disconnected from the end result for the client. Right?
Absolutely.
Especially happens in larger organizations. You know, it's hard to get someone who may be in some kind of, you know, paperwork, accounting, bureaucracy position to be tied to the end goal of, you know, a client or a customer, right? So having everybody on mission is super important, and having them understand what that mission is super important.
So let's go around the room real quick. And what is one of the main reasons you think employees have left your organization?
Have left our organization?
Left your organization or other organizations if you don't have employees?
Well, generally speaking, most of the employees that we have had ever that left, which is a couple, left because they moved to a similar organization for more money. With the training and experience they had from our company, but that's kind of the point, right? You know,
yeah.
So
money.
Yeah, money definitely. Once they have the skills that they could, you know, get more money, right? Because it's definitely difficult to ask for more money at a company until you have the experience,
right?
And you know, I don't blame anyone for doing that kind of thing. I used to do as an IT contractor, right? That's why you work as a contractor. So every 6 months you can ask for more money at the next place. Fastest way to get a raise.
What I'm seeing right now is the attrition happening in my environment is directly related to, I'm just going to say, poor management and money combination. Okay. They're not managing local cost of livings. They're taking away raises, but yet also gung-ho meetings that we've had the best year we've ever had, but yet still taking away raises. So ours is quite a bit of poor management and primary money, because I've done a research on the pay scales of the company, and they're about 72% of the local median for administrative positions.
So Henry or Kayla, how about you two?
I would say money, and then also a disconnect between like direct management and upper management and the main employees. There is a bit of an age gap there, and so I think different views on how to keep up with engagement is
Okay, Henry.
I've had an employee leave due to family, having to move back to where family was. So it's a geographical issues.
Yeah, and that happens on occasion, and there's nothing we can do about that unless we can have a position that we can do remotely, and they can work from that other area. Shanna, how about you?
So for me, it's been primarily lack of hours and instability. We've been open for less than 2 years, and in that time, it's all been COVID restrictions. We couldn't open for 3 months. We lost a lot of people at that point because we couldn't give them any hours. So it really comes down to money, but it's the inability to provide the hours that give them the money they want.
Deanna, do you want to jump in?
Well, I would just say that, a lot of times with a nonprofit organization like we are, it is, we're, and a lot of our staff is front facing with the private sector. And so we lose a lot of employees to the private sector where they have better opportunity, better pay, those kinds of things. And so, and again, like Matt said, I don't begrudge anybody in that, doing that, bettering themselves and finding a better opportunity that helps support them and their families. I do think that that COVID has created a very interesting situation for small business owners where employee engagement has maybe slipped down the priority list. And it's like, in 2020, it was, how am I going to keep my doors open? Then it was, how am I going to keep my staff and my customers safe? How am I going to deal with any new mandates that come along? So the employee engagement, I think, piece of it is something that, employers are going to have to bring back front and center because it's been a couple of years of really reshuffling priorities for employers.
Tonian.
So I'll give examples of both. So as an employer, I had an employee within the last few months basically leave because she wanted to get more education on her roles. And she felt the role itself was taking up her time from learning. So she went back to school. So now me in my prior life as an employee, money was one main reason. Maybe not the only. Well, I'd stayed in this job because the health benefits were exceptional and I couldn't get better anywhere else. I had several surgeries that were like completely paid for because of that coverage. So when you have that for your family, it's hard to leave. But when I finally did it, money, mind-numbing repetition of the task at hand for the job, and no clear path for advancement. As far as in position, that was, if you're the type like I am, like, okay, I can do this and master it, but then I need more challenges and more, more responsibility after time goes on. So that was mine as an employee.
Mark, did you want to throw one in?
Well, I think for me, my business, I'm an independent agent and I bring on other independent agents. So a lot of times people leave because the fit just isn't there. They like the concept of what we do and they see down the road that there is some income here, but they don't have part of themselves to go out and do the work that needs to happen to make that get there. So from that standpoint, I think it's a fit, but I think you could also look at that from an employer standpoint with your employees and, do you have the right person in the right position doing the right tasks?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that we looked at here is I went out and 10 reasons why employees defect. I went to all these different sites and we have Gallup, we have Glassdoor, Dale Carnegie's thought leadership team. We looked at about 6 different sites and came up with the top 10. And it was really interesting that most of them all had the same in the top 10. So we're gonna take a look at these and kind of talk about them real briefly and then kind of move on to what we need to do to keep our employees more engaged. Lack of trust and respect and purpose, vision and mission of the company. This goes to pride in the organization. They don't trust the owners. They don't trust the leadership. They're not talking the talk. They're not walking the walk. They have this vision and mission of what they're going to do, and they're doing the opposite. And it kind of goes back to what Deanna said. During COVID, we were focused on a whole bunch of different issues, and we stopped looking at, our mission and vision. We started focusing on how are we going to survive, which kind of deteriorated that. Now, a lot of these were done right at the beginning of COVID. So, some of these have probably even increased, more and moved up a little bit as priority. And they're not in order of any order. It's just these were the top 10 and what was represented. Relationship with a supervisor, bad managers. You have a manager that just doesn't, engage their teams. They're kind of like just beating up on you. They have no idea how to communicate effectively. So, and that was almost in the top 3 on every site that we went to. So, and it goes back to what our research that showed is you have to have a manager that they get, can relate with. They respond well with, they can communicate with. If you don't, they're going to feel like they're out the door. Overworked. How many of you think this is having to work a lot of overtime? So
No,
go ahead. What?
no, being overworked has nothing to do with getting overtime. Being overworked is if you have so many hours in a week and your requirement is beyond what your original hours are without compensation. That to me is being overworked.
Yeah, and that was the definition. And they're talking about somebody who has to work, 50 hours without the resources and materials to do their job effectively in a time that's allowed. That is being overworked. And that's kind of, you were hitting it right on the spot, is that, they can't get it done in the time allowed because they don't have the resources. They don't have, the materials or the technology in place to do that. And the company can't afford it right now because of, what's happened in the last couple of years. So we need to understand that, we have to be able to give the employee a job that they can complete in the amount of time given during the work week. We can't just expect them to stay and work on their own or try and get it done and not get paid for it. Poor compensation, big issue, okay? Because you guys all were saying money, 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 money. So this was a Gallup poll that was done. And this is for, middle income level people, $50,000 to, $80,000 a year. And Gallup and also LinkedIn and Glassdoor all had, kind of a different opinion of this. They were pretty close together. People leave for an average of 5.2% more salary. So if you're thinking about that as a small business owner, 50 grand a year, that equates out to $216 a month or $2,600 a year. They left for $2,600 a year or $1.25 more an hour. Now, looking at that, it's like, okay, some of you said they went and they got their skills developed and they moved for a great increase. We can't offer them $10,000 increase in wages if they, if they're getting that offer. That's when you say, thank you, I really appreciate it. I totally understand. But when it's only $1 an hour, 50 cents an hour, what can we do to kind of help, keep them here and attract them there and not lose them for $1 an hour more? And as some of you others said, be able to keep our good employees from jumping ship because we're giving them a little bit more compensation. So how do we address that?
Well, I could tell you some feedback that we had from people who left our organization. And after they went to other companies, the thing that they said they missed the most about working with our company was not having structured hours or workplaces. So they could work from where they wanted to work. They could work when they wanted to work, with the exception of meetings and deadlines, right?
And that's number 6.
That's a big one.
Yeah. So, but compensation is hard. And, we talked to other people and stuff, and what could you do besides increasing their hourly rate to, prevent them from leaving? Let's say it's somebody who has a long commute and they're going to a job for $1.50 an hour more because it's closer to home. So how could you compete with that? What could we do?
Yeah, well, I've heard of people taking less money to reduce their commute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And so one of the things that, we look at is, how do we, communicate that? And maybe it's offer them an expense account. Say, hey, you know, we'll give you an expense account for mileage and for this and for other things that I know that you pay out of your own pocket. You're not compensating them directly. You're giving them expense that you can write off in your business, and maybe it competes with it, giving them something, you know, extra, or letting them, you know, have a Friday afternoon off, you know, every other week or something. Just being able to, you know, compete with that, giving them a reason for wanting to stay versus, okay, I'm going to jump for $1.25 an hour.
Do you think, Kevin, do you
Yeah.
think a public transit stipend would help alleviate that as well? Or is it better to reimburse?
It's, again, what we got to look at is what is the real cause. If somebody's leaving for $1 an hour, I'm going to tell you that the real cause isn't the mileage. It's not the, you know, transportation issues or being closer to home. There's something else. And
That's
that
what I
goes
was-
back to what we have to talk about, engagement. What is the real root of that? Because most people don't leave for $1 an hour, even though these polls are saying 5.2%, you know, increase in wages. It's not because of the wage. It's because of something else.
That's what
And
I was gonna say. That's what I was getting to earlier. Is
Yep.
if an employee is giving their notice and leaving and telling and saying, I'm leaving for $1.50 an hour or something, first of all, you're probably too late because there's something you've missed. And secondly, if they're applied for other jobs, received another job, and have given notice, chances are something's been going on for a lot longer than that month-long process of getting hired somewhere else. And chances are that's not the first job they've applied to that they actually got. So I don't think that most employees are leaving for $1.50 an hour. I absolutely agree with you on that. I think what it has to do with, quite frequently, it goes back to that satisfaction with your immediate manager and or belief in the senior leadership. And I think you also have to revisit that being overworked factor, because right now we're on year 3 of COVID factors. Well, how many people have been laid off by their company without actually wanting to, just for their company to receive the federal funds?
right.
You know, what all has been going on with that particular employee, and especially if they've been there for 3 years or more through all of this, why at this point are they leaving for $1.50 an hour?
And you
I
know, it goes
think
back.
it's a lot deeper than that.
It goes back to what Deanne was saying is, you know, the engagement. We stopped focusing on engagement last 2 years because of COVID.
Right.
And so we're going to go through the rest of these real quick, and then, you know, we're going to kind of start looking at some of the things we can do as owners, managers to start engaging our teams. But communication, I really wanted to hit this one because it's important. Giving positive feedback, not negative. Okay. If you give positive feedback, an employee will be more engaged 50% of the time, 49% of the time, they're like, okay, whatever. If you give negative feedback, they might have taken it in constructive criticism, but only 10.4% of the time. Almost 90% of the time they don't. Going back down to the bottom one, if after receiving feedback, if they, you know, have positive feedback, 58% of the time, they're not going to start looking for another job. 38%, they might, you know, kind of feel out there, and only 3% are actually looking for another job because they didn't like what you said, even though it was positive, encouraging, engaging. If it's negative, 50% of your team will start looking for another job. So feedback is a very, very important factor. And Charles Schwab, not the guy that owns the securities company, he was a steel mill guy, and he said that you get more results with positive feedback than you do with negative, and you build more engagement. And so this is a big, big issue that we have, especially during COVID. We didn't give those positive feedbacks for the small things, and, you know, looking at the positive and trying to build on our people. We just said, hey, just do this. Okay, I don't have time for you. I got to focus on this. I got to do this. And that can cause that. Feedback is a very important issue that we need to stay on top of and letting the team know, especially with the 2 new generations. They like constant feedback. Poor work-life balance and flexibility. This is one that Matt was talking about. And here's the funny thing, you know, being more flexible. Hey, if we're in a manufacturing industry, it's hard to have flexible, you know, shifts. You have to do it. Now, looking at that, you know, I know some manufacturing organizations that my son works for one, they give him 4 12-hour days. So they work 4 12-hour shifts. They have 3 days off. And then the next week they do 3 12-hour days and he has 4 days off. That's more flexible shift. Thinking about that. And those people that moved and worked from home, how are they handling work-life balance? Studies are showing that people that are working from home have a tendency to get up earlier, start work earlier, stay longer, not take as many breaks, and work later. So we're not promoting a work-life balance. We need to, okay, if you're going to be flexible and working from home, I want you to clock off at 5. I know you like to hang out and work more, but I really need you to do this. And promoting that and making sure that they, you know, try to stay on that it's more about them. Lack of stimulating work. Matt, you talked about this. They get bored, and to Tony, and they get bored. How can you challenge them? You know, get them encouraged to, you know, do something. No career path or development. Toxic or negative work culture. That's the whiny, sucky babies coming in, creating that, maybe a bad manager. And the last one, because this is important for all of us as small business owners. We've had people leave because of COVID. We're now in this, oh, I got to get somebody in here. What do I do? I'll hire anybody breathing that, you know, can fog a mirror and has certain credentials. Well, they might not be the best fit for your organization. And so we got to kind of look at those and say, okay, we can't just throw out our, you know, requirements for hiring somebody just because we're in a desperate need. Because we do that, it causes some of our better people to leave. And we don't want that. Anybody disagree?
I've absolutely seen that. We need somebody, so we're just going to hire because we only got 3 applicants and we need somebody. So we hire somebody. And then it's 6 months of pretty horrible. And then you have other employees trying to clean that mess up. And then they're leaving because they're irritated about it.
Yep. So it was one of those things that we really got to pay attention to, you know, especially now that we are in a deficit and trying to catch up. And I'll throw out an idea at the end of this, if you remind me of what you can do to do that, you know, temporarily. So you know, we're kind of getting crunched on time, but so let's just look at this. How can you identify engagement issues in your organization? What is a clue that people are starting to feel like they're in step 3, that they're bored, they're looking, they're tired of the, you know, what's going on? Where can we start to focus in and kind of get some cues on, you know, that employees starting to go through a burnout and is talking about leaving your organization?
Definitely engaging with the outcome, you know, so that you can have your employees be connected to what their piece of the puzzle does for the, you know, person who gets the end product, you know, whether that's manufacturing and they could, you know, see the result of the happy customer kind of thing, or, you know, depending upon the type of organization. But there's always somebody going through some kind of transformation from something they were unhappy about to something that they're happy about, right? Solving some kind of problem. And if people know their piece of solving that problem, it really helps them engage and be on board with the mission.
Yeah. I heard somebody else want to jump in.
What I see is, I see it in, interesting, I see it in people's emails and body language and their office spaces. I think there's a lot of very big visual tells before somebody's actually, before you see it in their actual work. But I recently, you know, I saw somebody's, their email wording was just different. And so I shot an email out and said, hey, just checking in, how's everything going? We'll come to find out somebody had jumped on the admin person, and that person, I mean, that person was like beat up, and it had been going on for about 2 weeks. And I had noticed different emails, responses. There was nothing that said it, but just like the 2-sentence email or the 1-sentence email answering a question as opposed to an explanation. Or, and I think you can kind of watch people walk in and walk out. Their body language tells you that something's happening with them, whether it be personal or not. As a manager, you check in. You find out what that employee needs in that moment and see if you can get information and how to support them, because that's how you engage your people.
So you're right on key, and that's why we talked about the engagement here. This is the most important thing that we have to do as owners, managers, to keep our people from leaving and going to another job for $1 an hour more. Because I'm telling you, it's not the money; it's the relationship, the value. And when somebody feels valued, they're in that disengaged level. So what we got to take them to get them to partially engage is we start building their confidence, encouraging them, building recognition, giving them that excitement, and then giving them a task is moving them up to that next level of fully engaged. Say, hey, I want you to come up with a great idea to put this together. Here's all your strengths. You told me you can do this and this. Let's see what you can do. Put it to work. And so that's how we start to build that engagement and move them up to the top of the ladder. And these are the 3 areas in some of the ideas that we have, from Dale Carnegie and some other ones that help build that sense of pride, becoming interested in that other person. And since we really focus on, how do we relate to that person and engage them, let's look at this middle one here, becoming interest. Ask questions. Talk to your employees. Don't just assume that they're happy, because the biggest thing we can do is go out and communicate and listen. Have both our ears open, listen for understanding. Don't try to say, well, we can do this. Hear the whole thing. Because sometimes an employee will start talking about wages and that they're, dissatisfied with their compensation. And it turns out they're not really dissatisfied. There's an issue at work with an employee, a coworker, a manager, or something else that's making them disengage. And so talking to them, listening to them, encouraging them, even for the smallest improvement. Don't, just encourage them for the big events or results. Encourage them on, things. Say, hey, the other day, Johnny was out in the shop and he did this and he did such a great job that I just want him to demonstrate how he used that technique to make it look so pretty. He polished this piece of machinery and it just came out. So Johnny, would you just take a minute and show everybody how you did that? Encourage them, make them feel confident, make them feel part of the process, and giving them a challenge and stuff. Appreciation, personal successes, discuss career direction. So, and support work-life balance. Biggest issue right now because of COVID. How do we support that? We can't take work home. We can't take home to work. How do we balance the two? And that's with people working from home, that's kind of started to get blended, and that's a lot of the areas of dissatisfaction. So if you're an organization that allows your employees to work from home, what are you doing to make sure they're not overworking at home and having that extra time with their kids and families? So I'm going to skip through that. Burnout to engage. I already said this. Discuss what they like about their job and why. What don't they like? What could you change? Reinvent the job based on their strengths. One of the funniest things that we do in one of our programs is we talk about here's X, oops, if I can get this, and here's Y. As a leader and as a manager, this is the way we do it, okay? If we assign a task to somebody and they do it like this, and they get to the same point, what do we normally say to them?
Criticize.
There's
That's
an
not the
easier
way
way
to
to
do it.
do that.
Yeah. Now, doesn't matter how they did it, as long as they got there to the same point in the same time frame with the same amount of material.
Nope.
So encourage them that, hey, that was a unique way of doing that. You want a couple ideas on how you might be able to be more efficient at that? Let me have you work with Johnny, giving him a positive colleague as a mentor. Say, hey, Johnny does this and he's got some really unique ideas. Not only are you building up Johnny, you're building up that employee. You're bringing 2 people together and having them work in a relationship. Don't do that with somebody who's a bad manager. Do it with somebody that is encouraging, engaging, and is really excited about being in the company and helping them focus on that. Create a personal vision and mission statement and goals for them. This is not just talking about, what their vision and mission is here at work. What do they want to do long term? Do they want to be here for long term? Do they want to move outside of the organization? Do they want other education? Titonian talked about, education, that they didn't have, they wanted to improve their skills. Well, give them that opportunity. Maybe instead of, giving them a raise, say, hey, I will pay 25% or 50% of, any college courses you take on this topic matter. So in, encompassing that into part of your, compensation package to help build their skills. Empower them to do the best they can, him or her, get behind them, support them, encourage them, maybe be their coach and mentor as well. Celebrate efforts, not just results. So kind of going through these, I mean, these are some of the things that you can start turning engagement, burnout into engagement. And then we'll go back a slide here. Oh, I got to turn off my clear. I forget, I got to turn off the fun annotate. So what step should we start the process?
Kind of in the training.
I'm gonna say right here. Once they start getting comfortable with the routine, start to put in the challenge, motivate them, encourage them, and get that. If you can start it here, chances are they're not gonna get past there. If we're engaged, we're listening to them, we're talking to them on a regular basis, we can get them started back at 1 and keep them focused there and not lose our employees. So focus in on that. I got a few minutes left, so wanted to kind of share some funnies with you because I always love funnies. Engagement. Go ahead and read this to yourselves. How many of us had managers like that? So, don't be that manager. Understand where your employees are, understand what you're doing. And by the way, just so that those know, because I know this is being recorded, Scott Adams is a graduate of Dale Carnegie and has given us permission to use any of his comics in any of our presentations. And because that's how much he believes in what we do. So we do share these, and they're funny because he has a lot of good ones. He has a couple stress ones that just really crack me up. So so changing the workforce, the bottom line, here's what it says. You guys can read this and look at this, and I'll entertain some questions. If anybody has any questions, comments that they like to, ask while we're here. We got about 5 minutes left.
I think one thing that you touched on, Kevin, that I think is super important is, showing your gratitude for your employees. And a lot of managers and business owners say, well, why should I thank someone for doing their job? And well, because of all the the benefits that come from them doing their job in a good way. And also there's the acknowledgement of somebody's good work and efforts in front of their peers.
Yep.
Is also very important, right? Because people have a vested interest in what other people think of them. And Kevin, you're always super helpful. You have great advice all the time in our other meetings and stuff. So on behalf of everybody here, I think we can, publicly thank you for all the help you've given us too. So,
And, Matt, one of the funny things you said, what two generations want more of that?
All generations want that.
Well,
when
I'd
you come
say-
to the marketing world, everybody wants to improve their status.
Yep.
And improving your status is being acknowledged for the good work that you do in front of others.
We call the millennials and the Zs, the current market, people that are starting to come in the marketplace, always want feedback. They want constant feedback. And believe it or not, the Zs are a little bit like the millennials in that they want feedback, but they're more like the baby boomers who want constructive feedback face to face, not in an email, not in a text, but face to face. Millennials, they want it constantly, every time, in a text, in the quickest, fastest. How am I doing? How am I doing? So we got to understand generations on that too. This is another factor that goes into this that we can't even begin to start to cover in an hour's time. So
yeah, well, and I've also found that, because I was a behavior specialist a long time before I went into administrative and management type work. And I find that by meeting people where they're at, whether it be, because everybody's brains work differently, they function differently. they process differently. And by getting to know your people, you can learn where their needs lie, and you have to approach them where they're at and within the needs that they have. And so by being a good manager, you connect with each individual and you provide the feedback and the kudos and everything within that person's needs, thus increasing the engagement. And yes, exactly. Number two, perfect. Yes. And I think that's has a big thing with how you keep employees and keep them happy and engaged. I mean,
Yep.
you're going to get significantly higher work productivity and success with employees that you have fun with. I mean, nobody wants to go to work just to drone away at it. People work to live, not live to work. So make your workplace be a beneficial, productive part of the rest of your life, not something you have to do to maintain the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And Henry, did you have a question also? I saw you unmuted there earlier.
No question.
Deanna, wrap up.
I would just close, I guess, by saying that January 1, 2022, the chamber implemented a 4-day work week for staff. So we split down the middle, and 5 folks take Fridays off and 5 folks take Mondays off. And then every quarter we switch. So, and it's because I really notice the difference of my team's productivity when they have 3-day work weekends. And they're Saturday and Sunday are really for getting stuff done you can't get done during the week. And then that extra day is to fill their tank. And I've noticed they love it, I would say. It's not something I'm taking part of because I want to be here for my team. But also the sort of uptick to that is that on Fridays and Mondays, I have half the interruptions that I have during Tuesday through Thursday, right? My team is not here. And so, and it's not a requirement of 10-hour work days. It's basically, what your job is, you're a professional, get it done.
Yeah.
And
that, good point that Deanne brought up. It's, creating that solution, but also as a manager, we need to have those breaks as well. Because if we're not getting our extra, energy, sometimes we start to get down and stuff. So Deanna, I would encourage you, take a break, take a day, go have some fun. So,
well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. Matt, any final words as our host?
Well, I'd just like to, mention that something that Shana said earlier about, people work to live, not live to work is absolutely true. You want to make sure you have the best environment possible, and you don't always know what's going on with people. If you don't have, an HR person or someone who's trained in what they can or can't ask people and, or what they should or shouldn't ask people, I think reaching out to your employees, in a way that they can offer to tell you if they have problems is a good way to handle it. And because you don't want to get across any medical, legal boundaries, right? Asking people about mental health questions and things like that. But also you want to try to make sure that the workplace, regardless of the size of your organization, that it works for everybody involved and that everybody is, rowing the boat in the same direction. So I think it's super important to make sure that everybody has buy-in with your mission of your team and your organization. Deanna, do you have anything else you want to add before we sign off today? And we can thank Kevin for his time.
And thank you as well, Matt, for hosting us this morning on our Small Business Solutions Series workshop. We meet every Wednesday, every first and third Wednesday, you'll have a new small business educational topic coming your way between 10 and 11.
Perfect. And Kevin, thank you so much for sharing with us. And like I said earlier, we're very lucky to have you with all your experience and expertise to help us out.
All right. Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed this. And, if there's more topics you guys want to share, let me know. Be glad to help out anytime.
Excellent. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you.